Welcome to the string class. In this lecture, we're going to be taking a look at constructing string objects, string class methods, and comparing string objects. So let's start off with constructing string objects. So just to make sure that you know, a string is an object. So we knew that a string is not a primitive type, and a string is in fact an object, and there is a string class. And that's how we create the string object. We create objects of the string class. And how you would define the string, how would you construct a string object is how you declare a string. String name equals new string and Bob. So what's doing is it's instantiating a string object with the name of with a value of Bob, and the name of this object is name. So, and then you could also, if you wanted to change the value of the string object from Bob, you could change it to name equals the string happy. So now that value of name would be happy. And then let's say that you wanted to add something on to the end of happy. So what you would do is you would go name equals name plus in quotations man. So what this does is this adds on man to the back of name. So let's see, we started off when we first declared this name object, we started off with Bob, then we changed its value to happy, and then after that we made it happy man because we added a man onto the back of name. Now one thing important to know is that just because we're putting man at the back, it does not mean that there's automatically a space there. As you can see, there's no space between happy and man. Unless we indicate there is a space, the computer assumes there is no space. And the plus symbol which we're using, we've seen it multiple times when printing out different things and we wanted to format our printing. But it's basically called a concatenation operator. And a simple way to understand it is it's an operator that you can use to combine strings. So if I were to go quotations happy, the happy string, combined with the man string, you simply just mesh the two together. Don't add a space unless a space is indicated, and it's used to combine strings objects. Next, since we know that there's a string class, let's look at some of the methods that are available within the string class that are useful for objects. Now there's a very large amount of string class methods, and we're going to be looking at some of them, and these some are on the AP Computer Science exam. So the first method that we're going to be taking a look at is the length method, and it's basically int length. So it returns an integer value, and the name is length, and it has no parameters. And it simply returns the length of the string, so the number of characters within the string. So string s equals new string I love APCS, and the value of this s of s is I love APCS. And if I were to say s.length parentheses, that would return a value of 11. Why would it return a value of 11? Let's count it out loud. 1i, 2 space, 3l, 4o, 5v, 6e, 7 space, 8a, 9p, 10c, and 11s. So that's the length because there's 11 characters in this string. So the length method would return 11. And that's simply, it's important to remember that the length method accounts even for the spaces in between. So that's important to add in as well. Next, let's take a look at the substring method. So the substring method returns a string. It takes a parameter int start index, and its name is substring. So what it does is it creates a substring that goes from the character indicated by start index to the end of the string. So let's take a look at an example. That's the best way to understand this. And let's declare s again, which is string s equals new string I love APCS, and then we would do s dot substring 3. So what this would do is this would go to the third character, and after it goes to the third character, it would cut off everything before that, and it would create a substring out of this string which goes from the third character to the end, and it would be whatever character whatever number we indicate by a start index. It would go from that index to the end of the string. So in this case, we have the third. So if we go to third, we go 1I, 2 space, and 3L. Now, you may be wondering, why isn't the L showing up? The L should show up because the character the character at the exact index at 3 should be part of this string. But the thing is that in programming, the counting starts with a 0. So the first is always referred to as 0, and similarly the second is the first. So everything is goes back by 1 because counting in computer science starts with 0, and this is standard all across computer science. So if we started counting again, the I represents 0, the space represents 2, and the space represents 1, and the L represents 2, and the O represents 3. So because the O represents 3, we start with that. We start with the third character, and we move on till the end of the string. So it becomes O of APCS. So since O is the third on the index, that's where the substring starts from, and it ends at the end of the string. Now let's look at the substring method again, and this time it remains the same. It returns a string, and this time the only difference is it takes two parameters, int the start index and int the end index. So you can probably tell by now that it basically creates a string that starts from the character indicated by the start index and goes on till the character at the end index. So one thing important to note is when you're getting the substring, when you start at an index and that index includes the character that started on, and the end index does not include the character that is started on. So as we look through this example, you'll understand what inclusive and non-inclusive means. And this is an example of overloading methods because we have two methods within the string class that have the same name and the same return type, but the difference is of the number of parameters. So that's something known as, another example of method overloading. So again, we have string s equals new string I love APCS, and we're going to say s dot substring 3, 8. So what's happening now, the result you get is O of AP. Now let's see why. So I represents 0, the space represents 1, L represents 2, and O represents 3. So as indicated by the first parameter of the substring method, we can see that we start at the third, at the index of value 3. So that means we start at the O. So now the V represents 4, the E represents 5, the space represents 6, the P represents 7, and the C represents 8. Now what happens is that you would probably expect it to print out OVE space APC, but what happens is at the end index, the character at the last index, the end index that's indicated, is not included in the substring. The character before before that is included. So we get O of AP, not O of APC. And the next method that we're going to be taking a look at is the index of method. And the index of method returns an integer, and it also takes in an argument of string type. So it returns the index of the location of the S string within a string, and it returns -1 if not present. So let's check an example, and we have string s equals new string I love APCS. So if I were to go s dot index of LO, the string, so then what would happen is the computer would look through the string, look through the string I love APCS or S, and it would basically look for the first occurrence of the string LO. So it would look at I, and since I is not part of this of LO, it would skip I. Then it would look at the space. Space is not part of LO, so that would go next, and then it would find an L, and the L is in the index of value 2. Then it would check the next one, and it has LO. So after the I and the space, it sees LO, which is exactly what it's looking for. Then it checks where LO starts, and that's the value it's going to return. So because LO starts at an index of value 2, that's exactly the number it returns. And remember, one thing about the index of method is it returns the first occurrence. So if LO was present a little bit down later to the right more in this string as well, it would only return 2 because it returns the first occurrence of the string you're looking for. And let's say we're trying to find out s.index of b. Now that's a bit of a problem because b is not present in the string. So as the computer looks through the string, and if it doesn't come across b, it will return a value of -1. So now we've gone over the string class methods, and now we're going to be comparing string objects. So we're going to be using the equals method as we do with the object class, because as we know, a string is an object, so it should be treated like one, and this equals method returns true or false. Now there is also another method in the string class which is known as the compare to method, and the compare to method returns an integer, and it takes a string value, it takes a string as a parameter, so it compares strings based on alphabetical order. So that's how it compares strings. So if you were to compare two strings and the value compared to returns is less than 0, that means that S1 is before S2 in a dictionary. If the value it returns is greater than 0, that means that S1 is after S2 in the dictionary. And if it equals exactly 0, that means that S1 is the same as S2. So how you would use this is, let's say you have a string S1 and you have a string S2. So you'd go S1 dot compare to in parentheses S2. So if it's less than 0, that means that S1 is ahead of before S2 in alphabetical order. It's greater than 0, S1 is after S2 in alphabetical order, and it's equivalent to 0. That means that S1 is the same as S2. And that's another way to compare when you want to put them in alphabetical order. So now we've taken a look at, we've looked at the constructing string objects, we've looked at the various string class methods such as the substring method, the index of method, and the length method. We've also looked at how we're going to compare different string objects with the compare to and equals method. And the string object is something that we use a lot in our programs, and these different methods will be immensely useful in our programs as we try to modify strings.